So being the church is more about the person, not church buildings, Bibles, and Bible scriptures. And a lot of times you'll find people are caught up in church buildings. They're caught up in, you'll hear people say the Bible says, and they'll quote all these fancy scriptures and what they know, and they want to show off their Bible quoting skills. And I think there's more people that are put off from churches nowadays because of a lot of the infighting over politics. And so you'll have some people that are in the community and they want to get together and they want to be, partnered. And it may mean they want to create a church. And so some people say it's more about the people rather than the building, and that is true. But that can also be problematic because everybody doesn't always get along. So you have churches that are white, churches that are black, churches that are diverse, churches that have different types of people, young people, older people, or all age people. And from what I've experienced, there's the multiculturalism churches where it's supposed to be more diverse and more inclusive, and lately because of the marriage equality issues and gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, there is not a lot of inclusiveness in some of these churches. There's a lot of meanness, there's a lot of hate. There's people that just hate gay people and they don't understand it, or they hate black people, or they hate Hispanic people, or they hate people that aren't like them or don't believe in the same things that they believe in. And so it is a turn off. And so you find that more people are pulling away from churches altogether. But some people, however, you have people who feel like they need to be in a building around a lot of people to validate their spiritual side. And so some people are obsessed with church buildings. There are church buildings that have like really pretty designs, paintings, maybe arts, European style paintings, Roman style paintings. And some people, they just want that ambiance or that atmosphere, and they're drawn to that. So there's different things that draw people to some of these organizations or churches, organized churches. So it could be a number of things. So what I've learned is that some people are drawn to the church, how it looks, how many people are there, what people are there. Is it people that are in their community that they're familiar with? Maybe they not only meet at church, they meet in other places outside of church, or they help in the community. Now there are some churches that do help, maybe homeless people, people who need food and clothes. They'll have donation days, or they'll have prayer meetings. People are in crisis. People feel like they want to find a safety net of support of people that they can trust when they're in a time of need, or maybe grieving, maybe they lost a loved one. So and then you have these mega churches, and some people like that all these people, it must be the right thing to do. There's so many people that have the same belief as I do, but that's not necessarily true. There are some churches that, you find these mega churches, there's been scandals where they do more pulling money in for their church rather than the community and helping. And they may have some branches where they're supposed to, like, maybe they have a prison ministry, or they have like a homeless ministry where they feed the homeless. And but there's some churches that don't really exercise all of that. They're more concerned about the looks of the building. Some people that are in churches may, worry about how you wear your hair, how you wear your clothes, what car you have, your house, what job you have, you know. And then there's some that don't worry about all of that. It depends. Everybody thinks different. Nobody is exactly a replica of one another. So, that may be problem in it of itself, because you assume that people have a similar mindset as you, but that's not always the case. And that's what we found out more recently. There are churches that are divided on issues of gay marriage. There are some churches that are more inclusive, and there are churches that are more welcoming, and then there are others that just aren't. And they focus on, who you're married to, who you're in a relationship with, who you're having sex with, and they condemn others, and they're judgmental, and they'll use scriptures as daggers or weapons to be critical and criticize people and put people down. And what I've learned is some people will, in other words, to not focus on the things that they're doing wrong, they focus on others and what other people are doing that they feel might be wrong, and they act like they're a judge or they're a god, and they condemn and put people down. And I've learned that a lot. It happens a lot in African American churches, where the things that I've experienced is what kind of car you drive, what clothes you're wearing, how you look, how you wear your hair, and condemning people for who they're in a relationship with. And I've experienced, or witnessed and experienced those things in African American churches. And then there's some churches that are focused on music. Music is like the big deal, the choirs and the singing, and who's singing, and whose voice is, harmonious, and, primarily because cultural wise, music is like a big thing in African American community in terms of gifts. And so some people will utilize that in churches, and sometimes they don't become famous, but they sound famous. And then there's others that do take it to a whole nother level and become famous for their music abilities. And there's issues around that as well. Some people will condemn people if they came from a church and they were singing out of a church, and then they leave and then start singing what they call secular music, which is not religious music. So there's big issues with that. And then you have, like I said, the buildings. Some people are obsessed with church buildings, stained glass, how many members are there, who's there. And women will go to churches to try to find a mate, and men will go to churches to find a mate. Some go for, they're not really trying to stalk people or prey upon people's weaknesses, but there are others that do. They're promiscuous, and they're really no good intentions. It's just the intention of being promiscuous and looking for sex. And it's just like going to a nightclub. Only thing is that people are more sneakier with it, and they go to a church and they act like they're so religious, but they're not. Some people condemn others, and they're critical, and they're not really living their lives like the Bible says. They always like to quote that, well, the Bible says, so a lot of people do that. But some people don't need all of that. Buildings, people, craziness, fighting, condemning, and critical individuals. They can just be spiritual and enjoy the wonders of the earth, the beauty and the natural beauty in it of itself. And that's more me. And I'll be honest, that's more in line with who I am as a person. That I don't like being around critical people. I don't like judgmental people that they want to see your faults and finger whip you, but they don't look at what they've done wrong, and they will never tell you what they've done wrong. It's always what you've done wrong, or what they think you're doing wrong, or if you don't dress the way they do and you don't think the way they do. So they're critical of you and condemning. So rather than being surrounded by a lot of people who, are hypocritical and condemning and contradicting, they're quoting Bible scriptures, but they don't live nowhere near those ways that they're claiming that other people should live. They don't even live that way themselves. It's more about the person and being the church. It's more about the person, not some entity that's going to fly out of the sky and save a bunch of black people. Not, or a bunch of people, period. It's not, Bible scriptures that put people down. It's not about what car you drive and what clothes you're wearing, but to enjoy, just living and breathing and some of the simple things that people take for granted in life. The having sunlight, looking at the clouds, having the water around you and the ocean, hearing the waves and hearing the wind, smelling the air, and just being able to do things that maybe you can't really explain. And maybe you don't want to explain it. You don't have to have some book telling you, well, this angel or this man in the sky created all of these things. Maybe that's not, none of that is true. It can be totally scientific, but you're enjoying just the simple things of life, your own spiritual oneness and spirituality without all the craziness. And so I've been really turned off by a lot of these churches. So sometimes I've gone, but I don't join any of them. And I don't have the same beliefs as everyone. And you're only human.